Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Kudos points to whoever can tell me where that's from. That opening music. Helter confirms I can be seen and heard. Thank you, Helter. I see Dragon in here. We'll give people a chance to catch up and chime in. And hopefully people are going to be able to make it in here today. A little bit of theme music at the beginning. I don't know if anybody will recognize that right off. I have Daniel joining me in the background. There is Daniel Striped Tiger. No, not Daniel Striped Tiger from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but Daniel. And then Miss Kitty is also joining us today for those of you who can actually see what's going on here. I know there are people who are listening and not watching. David coming to you live, middle of nowhere, Georgia, double secret location on double secret probation. Broadcasting on Coffee Talk Live, at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, and also at Prepper University on YouTube. There is Monkey has joined us. Didn't get a chance to hear that theme music, did you? Or did you? I don't know if anyone heard that. I didn't know if anyone heard that when I went live. But apparently no one knows where that's from either. And for those of you who are curious, that is some of the, or was some of the incidental music from the original Ara era G.I. Joe Sunbow production cartoon, after school programming. All People has joined us today. Thanks for coming in today, All People. Give you another shot of that music. Just a taste. For anyone who recognizes that. And what is this? Oh, okay. So that's just acting up. And going to start off actually today confirming a couple of things because, you know, I get challenged on things that I talk about on the channel, and sometimes people make corrections, and that's okay. And one of the things that I'm going to be showing in a moment is George Floyd's autopsy report, because I brought that up last week, and I had suggested that the report does not demonstrate death from injuries. And so, you know, that's opened up a whole new can of worms here now. And people are like, no, that's not true. Well, it's in the report. Secondly is I had said something about Theodore Roosevelt, you know, Teddy Roosevelt, president in the turn of the last century, and his involvement in the Panama Canal, and that he had basically incited a revolution in order to get it done because the government didn't want to do it. And so I'll be showing that as well, just to clarify what I'm talking about. So we'll go, I guess we can go ahead and get started. About 3.5 minutes in, as people trickle in. Don't know if everybody got notifications or not. Did you? You can let me know if you got notifications, like, or if you're just stumbling over this. There's John joining us today. Hello, John. Again, I don't know if everybody's getting their notifications. I get a lot of complaints about that, and that's why I asked. I did a short today about being shadowed, where I had shown behind the scenes at Prepper University my screenshot of it, you know, because I can see menus and things like that that the public cannot see. And it demonstrates that in the last 28 days, I've only picked up 10 subscribers. And there's almost 66,000 subscribers on that channel, and had, I believe it was more than 24,000 videos. Was it 24 or 28? I forget now. But it was, let's just say 24 for sake of argument. More than 24,000 videos viewed on that channel in the last month. 10 subscribers, YouTube? 10? Yeah, okay. And All People says exactly St. George died from drugs. He was not killed by any physical injuries from police or anyone else. Yeah, I've been hearing that too. A lot of people have been calling him St. George. I've been hearing that on Jason Whitlock calls him that. Jason Whitlock does YouTube videos, and he's pretty interesting. Yeah, All People says that ScrewTube is deleting my subscribers. I bet they are. I bet they are. That would not surprise me at all. But that's just an example of being shadowed for sure. But I'll go ahead and I'll open up this report and I'll show it to people just to, because I had brought it up, and people, they like to challenge you, and I can let you take a look for yourself. No, we don't want to see that. Hold on. Let's get rid of the ads. Here we go. Just released George Floyd's complete autopsy report. Actually, it was about 2 weeks ago, right? I think. And we'll just cut through all here and get to, this is the actual report. This is what I'm looking for right here. Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office autopsy report. Case title, blah, blah, blah. 46-year-old man who became unresponsive while being restrained by law enforcement officers, received medical care in the field and subsequently in Hennepin Healthcare Emergency Department, could not be resuscitated. And they have a listing of blunt injuries and a listing of natural diseases, and just running over this really quickly, reading a few of these off. Cutaneous blunt force injuries on forehead, face, upper lip, mucosal injuries of the lips. That means, on the inside, he busted his lip. Cutaneous blunt force injuries of the shoulders, hands, elbow, and legs. Patterned contusions in some areas abraded of the wrist, consistent with the restraints, aka handcuffs. So he had some scratches from handcuffs. He had a few abrasions and bumps and scratches from hitting the ground. Nothing unusual. Okay, really, that's nothing unusual. Natural diseases, arterioclastic heart disease, multifocal severe. So he had what they consider to be severe. I'm trying to highlight it. It won't work. Severe heart disease, hypertensive heart disease, cardiomegaly with mild biventricular dilation. It's a little faded. It's hard to read. Clinical history of hypertension, left pelvic tumor, incidental. And then here, Article 3, no life-threatening injuries are identified. And then they have to name every injury on here, facial, oral, neck, scalp, soft tissue, chest wall, soft tissue, brain tissue, visceral, on and on, that they can't find anything life-threatening from any kind of blunt trauma or punctures or anything like that. Viral testing. Let me see. Post-term nasal swab collected. Toxicology, and this is where it gets interesting. Fentanyl, norepinephrine, 4-ANP, I don't know what that is. Methamphetamine, hydroxy delta, carboxy, cotinine, caffeine, blood violations, negative for ethanol, methanol, isopropyl, or acetone. So there you go. There you go. And here's preparedness is here. Thanks for joining us. Stacy is here. Preparedness says guy wasn't in good shape at all. No, he was not in good shape. He had known heart conditions, and he was loaded with a variety of prescription and non-prescription medications. All People confirming here, he says St. George was not killed by cops. Everyone assumed without waiting for evidence Floyd was killed by cops. He was not. There's Antonios is here. Good evening from Greece. Excellent. How are things going in Greece? Oh, he's talking to someone else. I'm trying not to run over anybody's conversations here. Arkel is here. Anyways, I'm showing this because I brought it up last week. And, somebody challenges you, and the argument could always be made, well, how do we know they didn't just make it up? Hey, you don't, because we're talking about government. They could have made it up. I don't think so. Not this, or else they wouldn't have waited so long to hide it. But yeah, I wouldn't put it past the government to lie about anything. There's Keisha joining us today. Thanks for coming in. But yeah, that's the full official autopsy and identification, external examinations. And then there it goes on: tattoos, clothing and personal effects, evidences of injuries. And then it describes the sizes, like, for example, the contusion on his head is actually only 4 centimeters in diameter. So, I mean, it's a real small spot, things like that. But you can look this up now and read it for yourself. I just wanted to run that over really quickly since I had mentioned it in the first place, just trying to be consistent because, hey, I don't know everything. Uh-oh. Don't do that to me. Do not do that to me. That's better. Let me see. What do we got here? Oh, Antonio says not that good. Many arsons. Who's starting fires in Greece? And you hear that. I know Paris has been a nightmare for like 4 or 5 years now. And I know Greece has had a lot of problems as well. A lot of it migrant related. But yeah, that's unfortunate. But a lot of stuff like that, you don't hear too much about. Hopefully none of your property. Monkey says St. George's holy fentanyl relic. Yeah, indeed. All people said, just like the guy in the subway in New York was not killed by a veteran who restrained him. Yeah, I talked about that in another video, about that whole situation. He wasn't held for like 15 minutes and all that other stuff. And I want to see the guy who can struggle with anyone in restraints for 15 minutes without exhausting themselves and taking a nap. Monkey said he heard Derek Chauvin is going to take his case to Supreme Court. Oh my God. John says greased forest fires. Well, he said arsons. He didn't specify if it was property or if it was like in the woods or what. And we're still riding, says just left the big city for Southeast West Virginia. Okay. You know who really liked West Virginia? John Denver. This is the other thing that I had brought up last week that I just wanted to run over really quickly because, again, I talked about it, so I want to demonstrate. And I had failed to mention Colombia. I know that. But, just to be consistent, this day in history, Panama declares independence from Colombia in 1903. And what I was talking about was that Theodore Roosevelt instigated that whole thing so that he could build the Panama Canal. The French walked away from it, and he was like, hey, I'll do it. And then they were like, nah, dude, we've already lost 20,000 workers. Dead. We're done. And so he went to rebels and stirred up mess to get his way. And so you flip through the history here. Let me see if I can find where they talk about it. I want to find the right spot here. All right. Hey, Heron Treaty was signed with Colombia, granting the United States use of the Isthmus of Panama in exchange for financial compensation. U.S. Senate ratified the treaty. The Colombian Senate, fearing a loss of sovereignty, refused. In response, President Roosevelt gave tacit approval to a rebellion by Panamanian nationalists, rebels, guerrillas, which began November 3rd, 1903. To aid the rebels, U.S.-administered railroad in Panama removed its trains from the northern terminus of Colón, stranding the Colombian troops that were sent to crush the insurrection. And this is on the History Channel's website. Other Colombian forces were discouraged from marching on Panama by the arrival of U.S. Navy warships, and they named the Nashville here. And then on November 6th, 3 days later, the United States recognized the Republic of Panama. That was quick. And on November 18th, the Hay-Buano-Varilla Treaty was signed with Panama instead of Colombia, granting the United States exclusive and permanent possession of the Panama Canal Zone. So it couldn't get his way, started a revolution, got away with it, basically. So, and that's important to realize. A lot of things that he did were shady. The Spanish-American War, his dealings with Rockefeller. I think it was Rockefeller. His dealings with Rockefeller, who apparently he didn't like. Well, I can't blame him too much for that. The assassination of the president, because he was a vice president and became the president when the president was assassinated, like within, I think, 2 weeks after the inauguration. It's a lot of shady things that went on with Theodore Roosevelt. But again, I brought that up last week, and I wanted to do a little confirmation. And again, I had forgotten about Colombia, but I forgot to mention Colombia. There's Daniel again. Daniel is sleeping, keeping me company back there. Now, big in the news. There's a couple of things here in the news that struck me as interesting. And I'm going to bring up this first one. And this happened last week, and you've probably seen this story already. But I'll run it over. And who is this? John says he started national parks. Lots of missing visitors. And this particular article comes from the New York Post, but you can find it wherever you like. It says Texas TikToker Sassy Trucker trapped in Dubai faces 2 years in prison for screaming at car rental worker. I'm going to read the article and I'm going to tell you what's really going on because I know something about their law. And All People says, thank you for the history lessons. A majority of our society does not ever study history, so the information is really helpful. And that's true. No, they don't study history. They glaze over it, and a lot of it's sugar-coated. And especially nowadays, they look more so into like social aspects, and they twist it. So it is important to throw that out there, at least some general knowledge, stuff you could look up for yourself. Oh, JK made it. Thanks, JK, for joining us today. So let's take a look at the Sassy Trucker. Oh, here she is, Sassy Trucker in Dubai. Is the screen going to work? I'll get trying to let you look at it. They're trying to throw an ad on me here, and it's screwing things up. That's your Sassy Trucker in Dubai. All right. She's more of a TikToker than a trucker, but here we go. Texas TikToker is trapped in Dubai and faces 2 years in prison after, quote, screaming at an employee of a rental car agency. Tiara Allen, better known to her 182,800 followers as Sassy Trucker, has been stuck in the strict country since authorities whisked away her passport, the nonprofit group detained in Dubai revealed Monday. I bet you she did all this for attention. But like I said, I'm going to tell you a few things about this afterwards. Tiara, okay, I read that. The Houston social media star, 29, claims the screaming stemmed from a verbal tussle between herself and the manager of a local car rental shop when she stopped in to pick up her personal belongings in April. Allen's credit cards, debit cards, and cell phone have been impounded along with her rental car the day before the blow-up after she and her friends were involved in a minor traffic accident near the Arabian Gulf. The manager allegedly demanded money in exchange for the possessions and reacted with hostility towards Allen. He followed me outside the office and I felt very intimidated. I told him to stop, but instead he called the police and opened a case against me, apparently for screaming, Allen claims. I'm in shock that he frightened me. I told him to stop, and now the police have said I can't go home. I told them I have a medical emergency and need to return to the U.S., but they wouldn't let me. There she is again. Some more pictures of her being all TikTok-y. Hey, quit jumping around. Police confiscated Allen's passport and said they spent the last 3 months weighing whether or not to prosecute the influencer for shouting in public, which is considered an offensive behavior punishable by up to 2 years in prison, according to the detained in Dubai CEO Rhoda Sterling. Rhoda Sterling. Okay. Though she has not been jailed, Allen is incapable of leaving the country. Nonprofit believes Allen's detained as part of a blackmail scheme run by the car rental agency. It's extremely common for rental agencies to open cases against customers, meant to extort them. The hopes is that whomever they perceive to be a wealthy foreigner will often then offer them cash in order to drop the case. All right. Now, here's what I can tell you. Here's what I can tell you about this. Let me read a couple of comments first. Dragon says, it's a glorious way to learn real quick just how spoiled you become. A serious lesson in perspective and culture. Very true. And Rodney says, going to Dubai and acting like a sassy trucker is the height of stupidity. Not every country is like the United States. And Rodney made a $20 donation to the channel. Thank you very much, Rodney. I very much appreciate that. And again, as always, donations go a long way towards helping take care of the stray animals my wife and I care for. So it means a lot. Helter said she was acting the fool, being a Karen in a country that doesn't tolerate it. She thought her American's privilege would save her. She even posted a video talking about all the crazy laws in Dubai, including screaming, swearing in public. Yeah, and some of you already know where I'm going to go with this. Aricole says probably she was there to transfer her online earnings to UAE. We'll never know the truth. All people said, how much of you want to bet Sassy Trucker actually only a first, second, or third generation American and most likely a part of the post-1965? Monkey says, always looked up the country's local law before acting on an action. Very true. Bams says, don't go to shitholes. Actually, Dubai is very clean, very orderly country. And JK says, if you haven't got enough cards in the deck, you can be arrested for shouting in the UK. So here's the deal. Here's the problem. First of all, it's not so much the issue of shouting, but being a public nuisance. If you're out, you don't air your dirty laundry in public. So if she's outside yelling and cussing, you can get in a lot of trouble for that. They say you can be held for up to 2 years, but Dubai doesn't like people sitting in jail either, for the most part, not for small stuff. So she could have walked away from it if she wasn't having a problem with the person with the rental car agency. Problem here, they took her cards and her passport because if you owe money in Dubai, you cannot leave the country. You don't walk away owing debt. You don't walk away without a way to compensate for it. So what they're doing is because she's not in jail, she just can't leave because she doesn't have her passport. So they're weighing right now whether or not, okay, is there damage to the car? Does she owe? If she doesn't owe, we'll let her go. If she does owe, she's not going anywhere till she pays it. It's as simple as that. Also, again, sassy trucker. Hi, I'm a ratchet ghetto American, and I'm going to go to Dubai and cut up and post it on TikTok and do what I can get away with in the States in a country that won't tolerate it. And apparently, since she was already making fun of their laws, knows the rules. Don't go out in the street yelling and cussing. Don't do it. And she must have realized that there would be an issue if she owed anybody any money. If she damaged that car and that guy can prove it, she's not going anywhere until it's paid. And again, she's not sitting in jail. They're probably not going to throw her in jail. They're probably not going to throw her in jail. But This is one of those instances where she should have known better. All people saw my short about the cat food. He says, did Amazon refund your money for the spoiled cat food that it sent you? I have not heard back from them. I have not heard back from them yet. But if you didn't see that, I put up a short earlier in the week, or this is the start of the new week, really, but a couple days ago, Saturday, I think it was, because there was an odd smell from the cat food. One of the cans had broken open, which, that sort of thing happens, but apparently it broke open a long time ago because it had putrefied and it was full of maggots and insect eggs of some unidentified origin. So it was pretty nasty to have to deal with. Monkey says Dubai is very well made. You can look at photos from the 80s, 90s, and look at it now, going from empty to a lively city. All People says the UK arrests everyone for everything except for actual crimes. I have heard that. And you saw that one I've talked about where that woman was arrested for praying near, or she was down the street from or on the corner adjacent to an abortion clinic. And she was out there praying, and they said, "What are you doing? Are you praying?" And she said, "Yes," to myself. And they arrested her. And the charge they put on her, of course, was what safety zone. I forget the exact charge. And some person went on a huge diatribe in the comment section about all the laws and regulations, but it's all bullshit. That's a lie. John says there's a lot worse places to be stuck. Yeah, Dubai's not that bad, actually, from what I understand. I've never been there, so I can't speak firsthand, but I've heard it's not bad. But it's the same kind of BS charges that you used to see. And my example is Eastern Bloc, Cold War era Europe, where possession of a Bible, and again, I'll reference a great book to read on this, is God's Smuggler. That's God's Smuggler, which is a true life account of a man. I think he was Dutch. He was from I think he was from Switzerland, or he was Dutch. I forget the exact country, but he had a VW bug that he stuffed with Bibles, and he would go across the borders and smuggle the Bibles into these countries, into like Yugoslavia and Hungary and wherever. And in those countries, he would bring them into the Soviet Union, smuggling Bibles. He'd bring 100, 200 at a time to try to distribute. And in those places, in Christian churches, they were not allowed to have a Bible, or if they did have one, it was redacted. And if they did do a sermon, the sermon had to be pre-approved by somebody from some council or other. It was a lot of crap. It's an interesting book. It's a very interesting book. Keisha says Americans are very loud compared to other countries. Yeah, they can be. That's true. But in those countries, if you were caught with a Bible, you were charged with pornography. So on the books and in the records, it says arrest, charged, convicted, pornography, sentenced 2 months in labor camp, 2 months in detention, a month house arrest, whatever they stuck you with. But it said pornography. It was a BS charge. It was a loaded charge because the Bible's not pornography, obviously. Same thing with the laws in the UK right now, where, we're going to charge you with this, but it's something else. That's where I'm going with all that. I got a little wordy, but you get the point. Department of Truth, he says, hey, did you hear about Russia adopting a CBDC? It's insane how every single nation is moving towards that. US is next. FedNow was the first step. Yeah, well, no, I know that they were working on something. I thought they were working on something that's gold backed. I didn't know if it was going to be a CBDC though. And JK says that's true. And Preparedness says policing in the UK has gone severely downhill. No common sense anymore. They know what they're doing. All People said, wow, I read a comic book version of God's Smuggler back in junior high school. That would be Spire Comics. Spire Comics did a comic book adaptation of that book. A lot of the books that Spire did were based on either novels or documentaries that were true to life. So yeah, it would be Spire Comics. And JK says you have to know how to do baksheesh if you go to East Germany, Czech Republic, and know when to keep your mouth shut. Yeah, no kidding. And Rodney made another $5 donation from Rodney. Goodness, thank you, Rodney. It says, I remember reading God Smuggler in primary school. Good book. Opened my eyes to the dangers of communism. Wow. Thanks again, Rodney. Much appreciated. You won't find that book. That's on the banned list. You won't find that in public schools anymore, buddy, unfortunately. And it's something that should be read. You know, when you get to a point where you're old enough when you've got good reading comprehension skills, which your average public school graduate doesn't, you should start reading books like that so that you know what to look out for and what to avoid. You know, Animal Farm, 1984, Childhood's End, God Smuggler is another one that I would recommend. You know, those are important. But that's, yeah, Sassy Trucker, hemmed up in Dubai. Miss Kitty is back. Say hello, Miss Kitty. Hello, dear. Oh, okay. Good girl. You all right? Miss Kitty has rejoined us. She was gone for a minute. And All People says in the UK, get arrested for simply standing around and innocently looking at something if someone feels uncomfortable with your presence. Yeah, and that's what I mean. And JK says baksheesh equals bribe. You see a lot of that in South America too. It's just expected. They just, you want something done, you give the official, you give the cop whatever, a couple of bucks, and it gets handled. Department of Truth says, I'm confused because BRICS, China, India, Russia are all going to apparently develop a gold-backed currency, but yet they're also creating their own CBDC. Well, you know, the way of the world is we're headed in the direction of crypto, so they may as well be ahead of the curve, or the curve, rather. Yes, that's right. All People, Miss Kitty. Some of you don't have the ability to see what I'm doing. I know there's a few people that are listening and not watching. I'm surrounded by cats. So Bam says we're supposed to believe government need to have war against different governments to keep you safe. At the same time, all governments have the same talking points. Yeah, you can see a lot of that in 1984, actually. That's fighting with each other, but really the whole purpose is to keep farming the people in their own country. Nature Nerd says, what is Elon Musk doing with the X rebranding of Twitter? I don't know. I saw that. I did see that. I don't know what he's up to, but isn't he SpaceX? Maybe he's just trying to put it all under one umbrella and make it consistent. And Keisha says in Brazil, you have to pay the cops before they'll help you. Yeah. You see a lot of that down there. And Preparedness says Twix. I could go for a Twix, actually. I don't eat candy like all that. I don't think I've had a Twix bar in like years. I wonder if they still taste all right. Who knows? And speaking of the UK and their insane policies, here's another interesting snippet that caught my attention that you might find amusing. And this is from Sky News, which means it's got Piers Morgan all over it, who's not my favorite person. But what they're talking about, it's not a lie. Because I have seen this, I've seen reports of this in the United Kingdom and in Australia. And department says Elon apparently has a net worth of $236 billion. Must be nice. Maybe he could make a donation to the channel. That'd be great. It says, this is insanity. Again, this is Sky News. Piers Morgan slams UK schools for allowing children to identify as animals in the classroom. And as I pointed out, I've already heard about this happening in the UK, in Australia, and in the United States. Usually it's cats here for some reason. Everybody wants to be a damn cat, and they go around meowing and carrying on. It says schools in the United Kingdom have begun allowing students to identify as cats. Oh, there it is again. Horses and dinosaurs, with Piers Morgan labeling the news as insanity. The Telegraph reported the news earlier in the week, revealing students were chastised by teachers for questioning the self-proclaimed identity of their peers at Rye College in East Sussex. Morgan said, The acceptance of children identifying as animals doesn't come as a surprise. It wasn't so long ago when teachers asked children what they want to be, they meant what profession. Now they're asking them which animal, object, or beast they may identify as, he said. This isn't satire. It's a genuine story. It's true. It's going on in schools up and down the country. For those of us who have warned for years about the inevitable consequences of limitless self-identity, it sadly won't come as a surprise. Still quoting. A recording at Rye College uncovered a discussion students had with their teacher in regards to pupils' choices to identify as animals. One pupil said if they want to identify as a cat or something, they're genuinely unwell, before saying he was talking about their genders, not about their identity. The teacher responded, "You were questioning their identity. Where do you get this idea that there is only two genders? Gender is not linked to the parts you were born with. Gender is how you identify." Yeah, it's funny how that's changed over the years. The teacher added, there are actually three biological sexes because you can be born intersex. You can be born with male and female parts or hormones. In terms of gender, there are lots of genders. Well, no, that's not fair either, because there is a rare abnormality by which you can be born a hermaphrodite, but your sexual organs don't really work. The student attempted to simplify things. I don't know why I'm reading all that. Basically, what they're talking about, let me jump ahead here because I don't want to read their whole argument. It says, at the age of 13, those students who were wise enough to express honestly held opinion, which is one most people in the world would share. For that, their own teacher said they're despicable, and if they hold that view, they should go to a different school. Interesting. Has anybody heard about that in their country? Yeah, Preparedness says Pierce Morgan, the man who fled the country during the phone hacking scandal. Yeah, worthless controlled optimism. And Preparedness says people, including teachers, are scared to say anything anymore. Yeah. Well, you kind of got your hands tied if you're a teacher in public school at this point. If you don't agree with it, you can't fight it. You can leave or you can suck it up. And who wants to start all over again? That's really the argument. And I've mentioned it before. I have a couple of friends who are teachers. One of them, I think, has been a teacher in high school for 14 or 15 years in Georgia. And she's just like, if I hold out a little longer, I can retire. But I hate this now. I absolutely hate it. You can't do anything. The kids don't pay attention. They don't listen. They're not learning anything. There's all this social garbage. So what are you going to do? Yeah, Keisha says if she went around as a cat when she was a kid, her parents would have beat her to death. JK said if you have momentum activists in the school, that's the good stuff. And Nature says there are clearly no standards anymore in schools, which will trickle down through society. Correct. And Dragon says the cure is simple. Treat them like the animals they pretend to be. You're a cat, perfect. There's your cat food, your bowl of water, and your litter. You know what the problem is? Some of those kids will do it. And then who's going to clean the cat box? Stacy says, I'm tired of identifying all the identifying crap. No kidding. And Helter said the world has become a basket case. I do worry about future generations. If people don't stand up and start fighting against all the craziness, it's only going to continue to get worse. That's true. Monkey said, plus the hermaphrodite part is rare to be born with, so the third gender is BS. Yeah, it's very rare. And again, you're not really functional. You can be adjusted to appear either male or female. Like if you lean more towards female, then they can remove the male bits, but nothing's going to work properly, to my understanding. There are creatures that are born that's part of their normal genetics, like slugs are hermaphroditic, but with humans it doesn't work. All People says the identification is part of the programming system created to, I guess, euthanize those kids. Yeah, we are headed towards like a eunuch culture. Yeah, John wants to be a Thundercat. I don't blame you. Chitara was pretty hot in her day. And now I'm having issues. Hold on. Bam says that's why I identify as a flying squirrel. Extremely rare, a lot of special privileges. Yeah, plus you get to hang around with Bullwinkle. JK said we should talk. I'm down in beds. There's Fluke Man. Hi, David. Only just remembered you live today from a notification in approximately 5 live podcasts. Oh, you've gotten 1 notification out of 5, huh? Unbelievable. Shadow banning, folks. JK says they're mostly messing with kids having tough adolescence. Nature says I saw a dog in India with puppies in both parts, probably due to all the trash and pollution in the environment. That's been known to happen to frogs when they're exposed to pollution. Monkey says, and the people identifying as cats should expect the neutering and spaying process. They're doing it to themselves because they probably think they're, transitional too. Has Drubal has joined us today. Thanks for jumping in, Has Drubal, and popping into the live stream. Megan says, Megan's still talking about Sassy Trucker. Still talking about Sassy Trucker. But that's unfortunate, and that shouldn't be allowed. There should be a separation. There's nothing wrong with a child pretending and having an imagination, but there's a time when it shuts off. There's a time to put that away. And I've referenced Mr. Rogers in that. Why did we have the neighborhood of make-believe? Because that's when we're going to go pretend. And then when we're done, we come back to reality and we put the toys away. We put it away. You don't live out that fantasy constantly in every waking moment. It's unhealthy. It's unhealthy, and it leads to a lot of psychological issues. Sooner or later, those kids are going to realize they're not a horse. They're not a snake. They're not a dinosaur. And then what are they going to do? They're going to be depressed, and they're going to end up on a lot of meds. That's probably what they want. Department says heavy metals and crude oil, petrol derives synthetics mess with endocrine development. That's true. And Drubal says a news story you may not have heard of: U.S. citizen in serious condition in hospital after unprovoked attack in Dublin, Ireland capital, attacked by a gang of youths. There's a GoFundMe set up for a family. Yeah. This whole thing, speaking of Sassy Trucker, that could have been a setup for a GoFundMe too. She's already got advocacy groups watching out for her now, trying to help her. I bet you there's a lot of money in it for her, especially having close to 200,000 TikTok followers. We're like, oh, I need help. I need finances. Ian is here. It says hello from Canadistan, formerly Canada. Canadistan. No kidding. And Drupal says Dublin is as bad in part as any lawless U.S. city, so always be on guard. Fluke Man says growing in the 80s, I was a fan of Thundercats, always wanted to be my favorite character. Tigra, being so young, I couldn't explain why that was impossible. I just knew. Tiger of all characters, Tiger the Addict. They did 2 drug addict episodes with Tiger, one in the first season and one in the second season. The first season, he was addicted to that fruit that Mumra was giving him that he called Silky, right? He was like, do you have any more fruit, Silky? You remember that? And then the second season, it was it was some object. He couldn't put it down. And he was all bony. He lost all his weight. They always made him they always used him for the like, without saying it, but the drug PA episodes. Dragon says if kids identify as animals and their parents believe that, they should not be allowed in schools as pets, and animals are not allowed in schools. Yeah. That's interesting. That's a good point. He goes on to say that way you can affirm the child's gender as well as protect the rest of the kids from any harm from animals. Yeah, You know what? I tell my kid to bite people. They'll put an end to that quick. Yeah, you're a dog. Bite other kids. Bite other kids, and if they get upset, you can tell them, hey, he's a dog. He just needs discipline. Fluke says, I guess human instincts in the right environment work perfectly. Now, speaking of public schools, and I don't care what country you're in, if you got kids in public school, please try to get them out. I know it's not always easy. Something else public school related that caught my eye that I wanted to share. And this comes from a site called the Stock Dork. But this is a story you can find wherever. Find it, use your own news source. It doesn't matter. Revamped school policy eliminates parental consent to opt out of LG alphabet soup inclusive curriculum. This is very interesting. And it ties in with the concept that I always push, I always talk about, and I always bring up in loco parentis with public schools, in loco parentis in the place of, in loco in the Latin, not Spanish, crazy, although it is crazy. In loco parentis is supposed to give, and this is in America, but you'll find the same problem in any Western world country. The preparedness, you hit the nail on the head there. It says the state owns your kids, you're just the hoteler. Yeah. It's supposed to be, for example, like let's say your kid's at school, he falls down the stairs, he breaks his arm. Okay. In loco parentis, in loco parenting, in the place of parenting means the school has the authority to act as the parent in that instance. Okay, let's call an ambulance for Jimmy. He fell down the stairs. And then we'll call the parents. We're making an emergency decision. But they abuse that authority by encompassing everything. If you remember a few years back, there was a story about a kid who was at the shooting range with his father and posted it on his TikTok on like a Saturday or a Sunday, and the school suspended him for posting it on his TikTok. Didn't post it on anything involved with the school, didn't bring a gun to school, was with his father at a shooting range on the weekend and put it on his own, I think it was TikTok. I think it was TikTok. This was a couple years back. And everybody's like, how the hell can the school do this? In loco parentis, because the school is the parent as long as the child is enrolled. Nature says a whole society of enablers allowing people to live in make-believe land. Yeah, I identify as a millionaire. Where's my money? So back to this story. In recent development in the academic sphere, a notable school district in the vicinity of Washington has made, that's Washington State, I believe, has made public the reasons behind its decision to disallow the exclusion of students from lessons centered on books highlighting gay and gender activities. The reason, it turns out, is an overwhelming number of parental requests for the children to be exempted from those specific lessons. So Montgomery County Public Schools, based in Maryland, implemented this policy prohibiting opt-outs on March 23rd after initially permitting certain students to vacate the classrooms during the teachings of these lessons. According to district guidelines, schools have the flexibility to tweak their curriculum to suit requests from students or requests from parents, guardians on behalf of the students to be excluded from specific classroom discussions or activities that they believe would place a significant strain on their religious beliefs. Nonetheless, if the requests turn out to be too recurrent or too taxing, schools can decline to accommodate them. So basically, what happened was, let me see here. A couple of comments real quick. Dragon says schools have too much overreach over the students' private lives. They are the fourth branch of government. Yeah, I agree. Tourette says, do you believe we should ban TikTok? No, I don't see any reason to ban TikTok. And Rodney made another $5 donation. Goodness, Rodney, I'm overwhelmed. It says, looking at the state of public schools, homeschooling seems like a better option. It is. If you can do it. Absolutely, Rodney. If you can do it, you should. A lot of people think they can't because they think it'll be too hard. You got to try. You got to try. or at least get them into private school. Come up with something. Absolute worst case scenario, you got to debrief your kid every day when they come home from school, which most people aren't going to do because they don't know their kids and hell don't like them either. Quite frankly, Helta says parents are legally and morally responsible for their children until they're 18. Parents have a right and a need to know everything about their children. They do, but they don't exercise those rights. That's the problem. Preparedness says defund the educational system should be a trend. Won't happen though, because that it comes right from your taxes and right from your from lottery sales. That's where they get the bulk of their money. Federal money, taxes, state money, taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and then I mean they're like the mafia. They get money from all over the place. It's insane. Bingo says, "Hello, everyone. Just got the Oh God, just got the notification. Sorry, Bingo. Sorry, Bingo. We're going on about public school right now." Department says parents think their kids will show respect and love just because they feed them and send them off to school. Most people don't even know each other anymore. The human experience feels limited and numb. Yes, and I agree. They don't know their kids. I go on and on about that, and I have way too much experience with that, with juvenile justice, with public schools, with the daycare that I worked at, all those things. There's a big disconnect. But they'll tell, I love my kids. Everything I do is for my kids. And they don't know their kids at all. They don't. It's heartbreaking. Fluke Man says, you hear about Trump's speech. If he becomes president again, he'll reward good teachers, fire all the wokies. I have not heard that. Keisha says, what do you think about college? College is getting pretty bad too. It's getting to be indoctrination central. It used to stop at high school, but now it's expanding into colleges and universities. It has been for a while now. But I don't think you need to go to college to get a good experience or to get a good job or to be happy, any of that. But basically what happened here with this, getting back to the article on what happened with the Montgomery County Public Schools, the majority, and I don't mean 51%, the overwhelming majority, and it doesn't mention it in the article. I kind of glazed through here to look and see. I didn't see it. My understanding, it was something like close to 90% of the parents said, I do not want that type of curriculum taught to my kids, and opted out. And so the school department took a vote and decided to take that right from the parents to opt a child out of the classes. So they're going to teach it to them anyway, whether the parents want it or not. So don't tell me you have parental rights in school, because they just voted to take them away without the parental consent, to teach the kids something that the majority, the vast overwhelming majority of parents do not want their kids learning. They don't trust the school to do it. And I don't blame them. Dragon said in Florida, they have private companies like Step Up for students determining educational content on behalf of parents. They call it parental choice. It's been a devastating 5 years. And Nature Nerd again, parents are zoned out when they get home since they work 40 hours a week and think the school system is fine because I grew up that way. Yeah. And they should know better, because even in my day, it was shit. I went to public school in the 70s and 80s. Okay. I have a foot in the 70s and a foot in the 80s, and it was already garbage then. It was already garbage then. I can imagine. And what I've seen of it, because I pulled my own kids out in Boston, fought the system hard because they don't like that. Well, my oldest, because my youngest didn't go to public school until my ex got custody. So I pulled him out and had to fight with that, because they'd send truancy officers around to try to intimidate me all the time, and homeschooled him. But so it was bad when I was a kid. It was bad then. Any person who went to school ought to realize how much it sucks, unless you went to school in like the 50s. Bingo says, it's not your fault. Did you ever hear about the theory about the lottery pays the schools to no longer teach probability, so people don't understand the chance to win? I never heard that, but they can't do math anyway, so there you go. And Preparedness says the UK National Lottery is owned by the Canadian Teachers Pension Fund. Is it? That's nuts. And Helter says parents love their careers and make mansions more than the kids. They spend more time making money to pay off debts than spending time with their kids. They live in debt. They're slaves to debts. We're all slaves to debts, but it's a matter of how much. Unfortunately, I happen to be a big one because of a lot of leftover residual from my exes, tax debts and things like that. But, deliberately creating your own debts to get your hair done and your nails done and to get that new car and all this other stuff, but then somehow you're sacrificing for your kids by working so hard. And I rarely see it. I rarely run into a situation where I'm like, you know what, they're doing a great job with that kid. You know what I mean? Most of the time it's so disappointing and heartbreaking to see, because they're creating a generational curse. That child's going to grow up just like their parents, or worse. Probably worse because of the outside influences that are involved. It's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming. Department says, why are they promoting degeneracy, reducing the population, and trying to make people easier to control? Yeah, they're trying to reduce the population and make them easier to control. Also, you're easier to control if you're an idiot too. People are not smart. People are not that smart. People are not that smart anyways, even when they have common sense and a semblance of intelligence, book learning, and street knowledge. They can still be morons, okay? Human beings as a species are not that brilliant. I'm no Einstein, okay? But the kids that I'm seeing now, the generations coming up now, it's painful to see how dumb they are. And I brought this up before when when I ran the facility for JJA, when I ran the YRC2, we had a life skills class for these kids. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't sweep, they couldn't mop, because the chores in the facility were the responsibility of the clients that had to live there. Couldn't sweep, couldn't mop, couldn't run a washing machine, couldn't cook, knew nothing about cooking, knew nothing about weights and measures. Name it, keep going. They couldn't do it. Couldn't fold clothing. Keeping rooms clean and tidy was very tough. Couldn't make a bed. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible what they could not do. Couldn't operate a can opener. John says, I try to stay off the hamster wheel. It's a trap. Yeah, it is. And Nature says, if you win the lottery in the UK, there's no taxes on the winnings, so that's the best place to win the lottery. Yeah, that's true. Department's like, wow, damn. Yeah, this was a tough class for us. You ever see someone struggle spending 15 minutes trying to figure out a can opener? Or a person who's never 15, 16, 17 years old, never held a broom before, doesn't know what to do with it, can't operate a vacuum, can't operate a washing machine or a dryer. It's insane. And then the other skills, forget it. Can't count money. You've got an A in algebra and you're about to graduate next year, and you got a 3.8 GPA at the high school. Can't count cash. Even illiterate people growing up when I was a kid could count their money. Can't count money, can barely read, zero reading comprehension, handwriting is illegible, can't fill out a check, don't know one end of a job application from another. It's frightening. And think about this, that was more than 15 years ago that I ran that facility. But these are the kids that are coming up out of these public schools. And it's, but again, I emphasize on that A on algebra, because they all had an A in algebra. The calculator did the work, not you. If I was caught with a calculator when I was in school, I'd have gotten suspension for it. Keisha says, I know a guy that's 30 years old and didn't know who Liberace or Son of Sam was. And Stacy said, oh my God, that is so sad. It is. And I always wonder, what are these kids going to do? And not only that, because it's a correctional facility, a YRC2 is a halfway house. It's a nice way of saying a halfway house for the Juvenile Justice Authority. For those of you who aren't familiar with my work there, if they were coming out of real juvenile corrections, they would put them into a facility like mine to reintegrate them into society so that they could go home and screw up and go back to jail, which is what happened with like 98% of them. But because They didn't want to be there. So you're training kids who don't want to be trained, helping kids who don't want help. It drives me nuts. Fluke Man says this comment's not about hate or discrimination. Far left, BLM, etc. says Christians are one of the bigger threats. Correct me if I'm wrong. They should be more worried with Islam. Yeah, because Christians have already bowed the knee. They're not a threat because they're already backed down. Most churches in the U.S. sold their souls for the what is that? That charter that they get for taxes. I forget what they call it now. I forget the term. Is it the 501c? I'm trying to look it up. Is it a 501c or a 501c3? Yeah, it's 501c3. Here it is. Tax exempt 501c3. Okay. They sold their souls for that a long time ago. And so there are things, if you're a 501c3 church and they have a tax exemption status and they're able to run a food pantry where they get donations from supermarkets, give them food, then there are restrictions. And there are things they will never talk about in church that they probably should. Monkey says, remember when I was in SPED Elementary, I got to be able to count money and change with the lunch lady. At least my special ed, teacher in public school taught us basic math, writing, and reading. And Tourette says, what are your thoughts about mental health? I see a lot of influencers and celebrities advocating mental health. All of a sudden, people care about mental health. To me, this is about money. But yeah, well, it's gotten to be a big issue again now because of all of the medications. I mean, we're in a society now that loves giving people pills. It screws people up. It causes a lot of health problems. It causes a lot of psychological problems. I mean, think about it. Every antidepressant commercial you see, one of the side effects is suicidal thoughts. You're making it worse. So now all of a sudden they have a mental health. Yeah, all people. I figured it out. It was I wasn't sure for some reason. It's 501c3, and I looked it up, or 3C or 3C3, something like that. Stacy says Christians are not a threat, and JK says they cover up for things here, then suddenly go woke. And Bam says you promised to make a video about the church. They did not allow unvaccinated. Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that. It was a church I was going there to pick something up for somebody. I went with another person, and they wanted to know if we had had the shot. And I told them no, and they told me I couldn't come in. And this was only a couple of months ago. It was like what? It was like what? Well, actually, it was like 5-6 months ago, right? I think. It wasn't even during the whole pandemic. But mental health in this country got really bad because of the stigma of mental health facilities, which were exposed actually in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It opened up the idea that when you're in a mental health facility, even if you checked yourself in, you have basically no rights, and you don't. Not in the way that you would understand it. You really don't have any rights. And I've heard crazy stories because when I was running the YRC2 for the Juvenile Justice Authorities, we would occasionally get a client from a mental health facility. And some of the stuff they did to them in there, you wouldn't believe if I told you. It was insane. But because of the stigma of how things are run in those facilities and how strict they were, they shut a lot of them down across the entire country and put them out in the street or put them into group home facilities. And those people, a lot of them are dangerous or difficult to work with or life-threatening. Because I worked in mental health and I worked with inpatients, and last year, was it last year or the year before? I know 2 people in Georgia had been killed in a facility by one of the patients because they were dangerous and they got the drop on somebody, both females. that were killed, because mostly it's females in these facilities. I mean, they were thrilled to get me because males don't normally work in those places and they kind of need them. But 2 people were killed, one stabbed to death and one strangled. And there is no process of prosecuting the people that did it. All they do is relocate them to a different facility. So, yeah, it's scary. Stacy says, I'm not V'd either. Never thought about ever getting it. Yeah, there's no reason. Never will, they go on to say. Max wants to know if I think Trump will get convicted before he runs. I think that's the Dems' current plan. Well, if they do, it opens the door for it to happen to every ex-president. That's the problem. It's never happened before, no matter how shady things were after the fact, because it opens the door for that. Okay, you did it to this president, we'll do it to the next one, and the one after that, and the one after that. And I don't think they're trying to do it to embarrass him, but actually get a conviction, or at least a conviction where anything is done, not like the impeachment. We're like, oh, look here, you're impeached. And it's like, okay, whatever. It's more for embarrassment. But to actually convict him, actually put him in jail, something like that, then you can go back and look at every former president, former vice president, whatever, and attack them. And that's never been done. And Bam says, I've literally not put the mask on even once. That's probably extremely rare. Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I had to wear it when I worked in the facility because they insisted, although they couldn't make me do the thing. They tried to. And my wife and I both worked there, and we made it very clear, if you try to make us do it, we're going to leave. And they dropped it. They quit. They quit bothering us about it, actually. Keisha says at the mental hospital here, a nurse didn't do her 15-minute checks and the person hung herself. She was left to resign and no criminal charges. Yeah. But there are people, and I've worked with a few of them, that are really dangerous, and they should not be in public. But the state claims they have rights, so you have to treat them like everybody else, but they really don't. It is a bizarre set of double standards there. Like they say that, oh, just because they're mentally ill and in a facility doesn't mean that they can be denied sexual contact. Watch them have some and see what happens. The state will tear the place apart. There's a lot of double standards where that's concerned. And Chris says Islam is protected by left-wingers, which is ironic since Islam hates the alphabet people. That is true. Traditionalists, traditional ones, it is unforgivable. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks for joining us here today. Glad for everybody who had a chance to pop in. Special thanks, of course, to Rodney, who made a donation to the channel. Very much appreciated. Hasdrubal says, same thing here in Ireland. Shut down the hospitals and shove people into the communities. Yeah. And then a lot of them, again, are dangerous. They're a danger either to themselves or someone else. And it's unfortunate. There are people, they need to be put away. And it's just the way it is, like it or not. But yeah, I'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully we can get to do this again.